Okay, so before everyone jumps down my throat calling me the villain here, let me just say this whole thing is completely, utterly, absolutely blown out of proportion. Like, massively, catastrophically. I made one tiny joke, one harmless little comment that literally every woman on the planet has made at some point, and suddenly, I'm the bad guy. Please, if you can't handle a little playful banter in a relationship, if you need to be coddled and protected from every single observation that comes out of your partner's mouth, then maybe you're the problem, not me. But fine, fine, fine. Let me tell you what happened from the very beginning. From the moment we met to the moment everything exploded, and you'll see exactly what I mean. You'll understand that I was joking, that he completely overreacted in the most dramatic way humanly possible, and that what he did to me was borderline psychotic. Actually, scratch that, not borderline. It was psychotic. Full stop, period, end of discussion. And before you start typing your angry comments about how I deserved it, about how I'm a terrible person, about how he's a hero for putting me in my place, just hear me out. Because this story, it's way more complicated than it looks on the surface. And I'm tired, so tired, of being painted as the villain when I'm actually the victim here. So sit back, grab your popcorn, and let me tell you about the worst night of my entire life, and how one stupid joke destroyed everything I'd built. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. And hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. Marcus and I met 4 years ago at a friend's birthday party. It was one of those typical house parties where everyone's squeezed into a living room that's way too small, music's too loud, and you're holding a plastic cup of cheap wine while trying to have conversations by shouting over Beyoncé. I noticed him right away, not because he was tall, obviously, but because he had this really warm smile. He was talking to a group of guys by the kitchen, laughing at something, and when he laughed, his whole face lit up. It was nice, genuine, real. Unlike so many guys who are always trying too hard, always performing, always checking to see if you're watching them. He eventually made his way over to me, introduced himself, and we talked for hours. We clicked immediately. He was funny, smart, kind. He asked questions about my life and actually listened to the answers. He didn't interrupt me or try to one-up my stories. He just listened. And yes, fine, I noticed he was shorter than my usual type. I'd always dated tall guys before. My high school boyfriend was 6'1". My college ex was 6'3". Derek, the guy I dated right before Marcus, was 6'5". I liked being able to wear heels and still feel small next to them. I liked the way tall guys could wrap their arms around me and make me feel protected. It was just my preference. Everyone has preferences, right? But with Marcus, it didn't matter. Or at least, I told myself it didn't matter. He was 5'9", maybe 5'10" on a good day, and I'm 5'6", so he was taller than me, which was the important thing. I could wear flats and he'd still be taller. That was enough. Or so I thought. We started dating 2 weeks after that party. He asked me out to dinner, took me to this really nice Italian place, paid for everything without making a big deal about it. He walked me to my door, gave me a sweet kiss on the cheek, and texted me later that night to make sure I got inside okay. He was a gentleman, a real, actual gentleman, and I thought I'd hit the jackpot. The first few months were perfect. We did all the typical couple things: movies, dinners, weekend trips, lazy Sunday mornings in bed. He met my friends, and they loved him. I met his family, and his mum immediately started planning our wedding. Everything was smooth, easy, comfortable. And then, about 6 months in, I made my first comment about his height. We were at the mall, walking past a sporting goods store, and there was this basketball player, some guy from the local team, doing a signing event. He was enormous, like 6'9" or something. People were crowding around him, taking pictures, asking for autographs. I stopped and stared, because honestly, it was impressive. He was like a giant among regular people. And without thinking, I said, "Wow. Now that's tall. Can you imagine?" Marcus glanced over, shrugged, and said, "Yeah, he's pretty big." And that was it. No reaction, no tension, nothing. So I thought it was fine. I thought I could mention height the way you'd mention hair color, or eye color, or any other physical characteristic. Just an observation, just a comment. But looking back now, I wonder if that's when it started, that tiny seed of insecurity that I planted without even realizing it. After a year of dating, he proposed. It was romantic, thoughtful, exactly the kind of proposal I'd always wanted. He took me back to that Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date, got down on one knee in front of everyone, and asked me to spend the rest of my life with him. I said yes without hesitation, because I loved him. I really did. Height didn't matter. It was just a physical thing, just a superficial detail that had nothing to do with who he was as a person. At least, that's what I told myself. We got married 8 months later. The wedding was beautiful. I wore a gorgeous white dress, he wore a perfectly tailored suit, and we danced our first dance to some sappy love song that made both of us cry. Our families cried, our friends cheered, everything was perfect. And for the first year of marriage, it really was perfect. We moved into a cute little apartment, decorated it together, adopted a cat. We fell into a comfortable routine, work during the week, date nights on Fridays, lazy weekends watching movies and cooking together. But somewhere along the way, probably without even noticing, I started making more comments about height. Little things, observations, comparisons. Like when we'd see a couple walking down the street and the guy was really tall, I'd say, "Oh, look how cute they are. She's so tiny next to him." Or when we were watching a movie and the male lead was some 6'3" actor, I'd say, "God, he's gorgeous, so tall and handsome." Or when we went to parties and I'd meet one of Marcus's friends who happened to be tall, I'd later mention it. "Your friend Jason is really tall, huh? What is he, 6'2"? Marcus never said anything. He'd just nod or grunt or change the subject. And I took his silence as permission. I thought if it really bothered him, he'd tell me. He'd say something. He'd sit me down and explain that these comments hurt his feelings. But he never did. So I kept making them. And the thing is, I really didn't think it was a big deal. I wasn't comparing him to other men in a negative way. I wasn't saying, "I wish you were taller." I was just noticing things, observing the world around me, making casual comments the way people do. But apparently, to Marcus, every comment was a knife. Every observation was a criticism. Every mention of height was a reminder that he wasn't enough. I didn't know that then. I know it now. So, last week, we were driving home from dinner at this Italian place I absolutely love, called Antonio's. It's this cozy little restaurant with dim lighting and candles on every table, and the best carbonara you've ever tasted in your life. We'd been going there since our first date, and it was kind of our place, you know? The night had been going great. Really great, actually. I'd worn this new dress I'd bought, dark blue with a flattering neckline, and Marcus had complimented me the second I walked out of the bedroom. He'd made reservations at my favorite table by the window. He'd ordered wine without me having to ask. He'd listened to me talk about work drama for 20 minutes without looking at his phone once. I felt happy, connected, like we were in a really good place. We'd even talked about maybe taking a vacation soon, somewhere tropical. Maybe the Bahamas or Jamaica. Somewhere with beaches and fruity drinks and no responsibilities. He'd squeezed my hand across the table and said, "I'll look at flights this weekend," and I'd felt this warm rush of affection for him. This was my husband, my partner, the man I'd chosen to spend my life with. So after dinner, we walked back to the car hand in hand, and he opened the passenger door for me like he always does. I slid in, feeling content and a little drowsy from the wine and the pasta, and he got in the driver's side and started the engine. The radio came on automatically. Some pop station I'd programmed into his car months ago, and we pulled out of the parking lot onto the main road. For the first few minutes, we drove in comfortable silence. I was looking out the window, watching the streetlights blur past, thinking about absolutely nothing important, just existing, just being present in the moment. And then, this song came on, some cheesy, over-the-top love ballad by one of those breathy female singers who's always singing about her perfect boyfriend. The kind of song that makes you roll your eyes, but also secretly kind of enjoy, because it's so ridiculously romantic. The chorus was something about how the guy is so tall she needs a ladder to kiss him, or how she loves looking up at him, or something equally silly and hyperbolic. I laughed when I heard it. It was just so absurd, so exaggerated, that I couldn't help it. I even pointed at the radio and said, "Oh my God, this song is so dumb." Marcus smiled a little but didn't say anything. And then, because I was in a good mood, because I was feeling playful and silly and loose from the wine, because my brain-to-mouth filter was turned off, I said it. You know what? If some guy like 6'4" or 6'5" came along, I might have to trade up. Sorry, not sorry. I was grinning when I said it. I even did this little laugh at the end, this light, airy giggle that was supposed to signal that I was obviously joking. It was so clearly not serious. It was banter, playfulness, the kind of thing couples say to each other all the time. But the second the words left my mouth, I felt the temperature in the car drop about 10 degrees. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. His jaw clenched, his smile disappeared. He didn't look at me. He just stared straight ahead at the road, his face completely blank except for this tiny muscle twitching in his cheek. I waited for him to say something back, to tease me, to make a joke about trading me in for a supermodel or something. That's what couples do, right? They volley playful jabs back and forth. It's fun, it's flirting. But he didn't say anything. The silence stretched out, getting heavier and more uncomfortable with each passing second. I shifted in my seat, suddenly feeling awkward. "What?" I said, trying to sound casual. "It's a joke. You know I'm joking, right?" Still nothing. He just kept driving, his eyes fixed on the road, his knuckles white from gripping the wheel so hard. And that's when I started getting annoyed. Because why was he being so dramatic? Why was he making such a big deal out of a harmless comment? I'd said, "Sorry, not sorry," which is literally the universal signal for, "I'm joking and you shouldn't take this seriously." I rolled my eyes and crossed my arms, staring out my window, thinking he'd get over it by the time we got home. Thinking he was just being moody, maybe tired from work, maybe stressed about something else entirely. I didn't think it was actually about what I'd said, because what I'd said wasn't even that bad. Was it? We kept driving, the only sound in the car, now the low hum of the engine and that stupid love song still playing on the radio. The singer was belting about how her boyfriend is her dream come true, how she'll never let him go, and I wanted to reach over and change the station because the irony was suddenly too much. But I didn't. I just sat there, arms crossed, silently fuming that Marcus was being so sensitive. And then I noticed we weren't heading toward home. We'd passed our exit about a mile back, and he was still driving, still heading deeper into the city, toward neighborhoods I didn't recognize. Where are we going?" I asked, uncrossing my arms and sitting up straighter. He didn't answer. "Marcus? Hello? You missed our exit." Nothing. "Marcus?" Finally he spoke, his voice low and calm and somehow terrifying in its flatness. "I heard you." That was all he said, just those 3 words, "I heard you." And I felt my stomach twist into a knot because something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. But I still didn't understand what. I still thought he was just being dramatic, just making some kind of point, and that any second now he'd turn around and we'd go home, and maybe we'd argue a little, but then we'd make up, and everything would be fine. That's what I thought. I was so wrong. At first, when I realized we weren't heading home, I thought maybe Marcus was just taking the scenic route to cool off. Maybe he needed some time to process his emotions before we got back to the apartment. Maybe he was being mature about it, giving himself space so he wouldn't say something he'd regret. That's what I told myself anyway. But then we ended up in a part of town I didn't recognize at all, and not just unfamiliar, actively sketchy. The kind of area you accidentally drive through during the day and make sure your doors are locked. The kind of place where the streetlights are broken more often than they're working, where buildings have bars on the windows, where groups of people stand around on corners doing God knows what. It was dark, like really dark. The only real illumination came from a flickering neon sign advertising some convenience store up ahead, the kind of place that probably gets robbed twice a week. My heart started beating faster. Marcus, seriously, where are we? This isn't funny. He didn't respond. He just pulled into this cracked, potholed parking lot next to the convenience store and put the car in park. For a moment, we both just sat there in silence. I could hear my own breathing, could feel the anxiety starting to build in my chest. "What are we doing here?" I asked, my voice smaller now, less annoyed and more genuinely confused, maybe even a little scared. He turned off the engine, unbuckled his seatbelt and opened his door. Just like that, no explanation, no answer, just opened the door and got out. I sat there for a few seconds, frozen, watching him through the windshield as he started walking toward the convenience store. He wasn't walking fast or slow, wasn't stomping or dragging his feet. He was just walking, purposefully, like he knew exactly what he was doing, and that terrified me more than anything. I scrambled to unbuckle my own seatbelt, grabbed my purse, and stumbled out of the car in my heels, nearly twisting my ankle on the uneven pavement. "Marcus, wait!" I called after him, my heels clicking loudly as I tried to catch up. "What are you doing? Can you please just talk to me?" He didn't turn around, he didn't slow down, he just kept walking. And then I saw where he was heading, and my blood turned to ice. There was a man near the convenience store entrance, leaning against the building with one hand and holding onto a shopping cart piled high with blankets, plastic bags, and random junk with the other. He was huge, not just tall but broad-shouldered and thick, the kind of build that comes from manual labor, or maybe just good genetics. His clothes were dirty, stained, hanging off him in layers. His beard was long and unkempt, his hair matted under a stained baseball cap. He was clearly homeless. Obviously homeless, painfully, undeniably homeless. And Marcus was walking straight toward him. "Oh no," I whispered to myself. "Oh no, 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 he wouldn't." But he was. He absolutely was. I stopped a few feet behind Marcus, my heels rooted to the asphalt, watching in horror as my husband approached the stranger with what I can only describe as determined calm. "Hey man," Marcus said, his voice friendly, casual, like he was greeting an old friend. "Quick question for you." The homeless man looked up, confused but not hostile. "Yeah? How tall are you?" The man blinked, clearly taken aback by the random question. He straightened up a little, seemed to consider it, then shrugged. 6'7", maybe 6'8". I don't know. Been a while since I measured." Marcus nodded, like this was exactly the answer he'd been hoping for. "Perfect," he said. Then he turned and pointed directly at me. "My wife here says she wants a taller guy. You're way taller than me, like way taller. So I figured, why not introduce you two?" The parking lot seemed to tilt beneath my feet. The homeless man's eyes widened, and then he started laughing. This big, wheezing, incredulous laugh that echoed off the concrete walls of the convenience store. "You trading her in?" he managed to say between laughs. "For real?" "She said she would," Marcus said, his tone still so calm it was unsettling. She literally just told me that if someone taller came along, she'd trade up. So here we are. You're taller, way taller. She should be thrilled. I felt my face burning. I could feel eyes on us now. Other people in the parking lot had noticed the commotion. A couple of guys who'd been smoking near a beat-up sedan were watching with interest. A woman getting out of her car had frozen mid-step, phone already in her hand. Someone inside the convenience store was peering out through the grimy window. "Marcus," I hissed, rushing forward and grabbing his arm. "Stop, this isn't funny, let's just go." He pulled his arm away from me, not roughly, but firmly, definitively. "Why?" he asked, looking at me for the first time since we'd left the restaurant. His eyes were cold, detached, like he was looking at a stranger. "You said you wanted someone taller. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. Shouldn't you be thanking me?" The homeless man was still chuckling, clearly entertained by whatever domestic drama he'd stumbled into. "Man, I don't know what y'all got going on, but this is wild. She really said that." "She really did," Marcus confirmed. "Like, not even an hour ago. Said if someone 6'4" or taller came along, she'd trade me in. So here you go." He gestured between us like he was introducing business partners. "She's all yours if you want her." "I mean, she's pretty," the man said, looking me up and down in a way that made my skin crawl. "I'll take her if you're serious." By now, more people had gathered. Not a crowd, exactly, but enough that I felt surrounded, trapped. The woman with the phone was definitely recording. The guys near the sedan had moved closer to get a better view. Someone else had come out of the convenience store, probably the clerk, standing in the doorway with his arms crossed and a bemused expression on his face. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me whole. I wanted to wake up and realize this was all some horrible nightmare brought on by too much carbonara and wine. But it wasn't a nightmare. It was real. This was really happening. "Marcus, please," I begged, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was just joking. I would never actually leave you. You know that." "Do I?" he asked, his voice still maddeningly calm. "Because from where I'm standing, you've been making these jokes for years, mentioning how much you love tall guys, comparing me to your ex who was 6'5", pointing out every tall man we pass on the street. So forgive me if I'm having trouble seeing the humor." Tears were stinging my eyes now, threatening to spill over and ruin my makeup. "I didn't know it bothered you. You never said anything." "I shouldn't have to," he said. "You're my wife. You're supposed to care about my feelings without me having to spell them out for you." The homeless man cleared his throat. "So, is this happening, or—" And that's when Marcus did something that made my heart stop. He walked back to the car, opened the passenger door, reached in, and grabbed my purse from where I'd left it on the seat. Then he walked back and handed it to the homeless man. "Here," Marcus said. "You'll need this for the first date. There's probably a couple $100 in there. Should cover dinner and a movie." "What are you doing?" I shrieked, lunging for my purse. But the homeless man had already taken it, holding it up high above his head where I couldn't reach, grinning like this was the best entertainment he'd had in months. "Give that back," I demanded, jumping and grabbing at air like an idiot, while the onlookers laughed and filmed and whispered to each other. "Why?" Marcus asked. "You're with him now, right? He's taller. That's what you wanted. That's what you said you'd trade me for." "I didn't mean it," I screamed, no longer caring who heard me, no longer trying to maintain any dignity. "It was a stupid joke. I'm sorry, please, can we just leave?" "Oh, now it's a stupid joke," Marcus said, nodding slowly. "Funny how it's only stupid once there are consequences." The woman recording had moved closer, her phone aimed directly at my face. I could see myself on her screen, red-faced, tearful, makeup smudged, looking absolutely unhinged. This was going to be on the internet. This was going to be everywhere. Everyone I knew was going to see this. The thought made me feel physically sick. "Marcus, I'm begging you," I said, my voice breaking. "Please don't do this, please." He looked at me for a long moment, and I thought, I prayed, that maybe he'd soften. Maybe he'd realize he'd made his point. Maybe we could get in the car and go home and fight about this properly in private where it belonged. But then he said, "These jokes you make, they hit different when someone throws one back." And he turned and walked toward the car. My legs moved before my brain could catch up. I ran after him, my heels clicking frantically on the pavement, nearly tripping over a pothole. "Marcus, don't you dare leave me here." He got in the car, started the engine. The headlights flicked on, illuminating the parking lot in harsh white light. I grabbed the door handle, pulled on it desperately, but it was locked. I pounded on the window. "Marcus!" He looked at me through the glass, his expression completely blank, and said just loud enough for me to hear through the barrier, "I hope he's tall enough for you. Have fun." And then he put the car in reverse. I stumbled backward as he pulled out of the parking space, still yelling his name, still pounding my fists uselessly against air. He drove away. He actually drove away. I stood there in that parking lot, surrounded by strangers with their phones out, next to a homeless man still holding my purse, watching my husband's taillights disappear into the night. And I realized, with a horrible, sinking certainty, that I had just lost everything. For what felt like an eternity but was probably only about 30 seconds, I just stood there, frozen, staring at the empty space where Marcus's car had been, my brain refusing to process what had just happened. He left me, my husband, the man I'd married, the man who'd promised to love and cherish me for better or worse. He left me in a parking lot, in a bad neighborhood, at night, with strangers recording me on their phones, next to a homeless man holding my purse. This couldn't be real. This couldn't actually be happening. But the cold night air on my bare arms reminded me that yes, this was very, very real. "Hey, you okay?" The homeless man's voice broke through my shock. He was looking at me with something that might have been concern, or maybe just confusion about whether this bizarre situation was actually over. I turned to look at him, and for the first time, actually saw him as a person, rather than just a prop in Marcus's revenge fantasy. He had kind eyes, I realized, tired and weathered, but kind. He probably hadn't asked to be dragged into our marital drama. "My purse," I said weakly, holding out my hand. "Can I please have my purse back?" "Oh, yeah, sure." He handed it over immediately, no hesitation. I wasn't actually going to take it, just playing along with whatever that was. "Thank you," I managed to whisper, clutching the purse to my chest like it was a life preserver. He nodded, then seemed to hesitate before saying, "For what it's worth, that was pretty messed up what he did. You shouldn't have said what you said, but that..." He gestured vaguely at where the car had been. "That was cold." I didn't know how to respond to that. Didn't know how to feel about getting relationship advice from a homeless man in a convenience store parking lot at 10 o'clock at night. So I just nodded and turned away, trying to figure out what to do next. The small crowd that had gathered was dispersing now that the show was over, though the woman with the phone was still filming, probably getting some closing shots of me standing there looking pathetic and destroyed. I walked quickly toward the convenience store, needing to get under the lights, needing to feel less exposed. My hands were shaking as I fumbled in my purse for my phone. 17 text messages from my mom, 9 from my best friend Sarah, 5 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. How did people already know? Had that woman already posted her video? Was I already going viral? My stomach turned. I leaned against the grimy convenience store wall and tried to breathe normally, but it felt like my chest was being squeezed by an invisible fist. I needed to call someone. I needed to get out of here. I needed to fix this. But first, I tried calling Marcus. It went straight to voicemail. He'd either turned off his phone or blocked my number already. "Marcus, please," I said after the beep, my voice cracking. "Please pick up. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Please come back. I don't have a way home. Please." I hung up and waited, staring at my phone, willing it to ring, praying he'd call back, that this was all just a scare tactic. that he'd circle back around and pick me up and we'd go home and work this out like adults. But the phone stayed silent. I called again. Voicemail again. Marcus, this isn't funny anymore. I get it, okay? I get your point. You're right. I shouldn't have said what I said. But please, please don't leave me here. It's not safe. Please come back. Nothing. I tried 3 more times. Each call went straight to voicemail. Each voicemail was more desperate than the last. By the 5th try, I wasn't even forming coherent sentences anymore. I was just crying into the phone, begging, apologizing, promising I'd never make another height joke again, promising I'd be a better wife, promising anything and everything if he'd just come back. But he was gone. He was really, truly gone. Finally, my hand still shaking, I opened the Uber app. At least I could get myself home. At least I wouldn't have to spend the night in this horrible parking lot. The app showed a 15-minute wait. 15 minutes. 15 more minutes in this nightmare. I slid down the wall and sat on the filthy ground, not even caring that my dress was getting dirty, that I probably looked like absolute trash, that people walking by were staring at me. Nothing mattered anymore. My whole life had just imploded in the span of 20 minutes, and I was sitting on the ground outside a convenience store in the bad part of town, wearing a cocktail dress and heels, waiting for an Uber. The homeless man who'd been part of Marcus's humiliation plan was still nearby, sitting on an overturned crate next to his shopping cart. He caught my eye and gave a small, sympathetic shrug. "Relationships are hard," he said simply. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Yeah, they are." We sat in silence for a while, me on the ground, him on his crate, both of us just existing in the aftermath of whatever that had been. After what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes, he spoke again. "You really didn't mean it, huh? What you said about trading him." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "No, I mean, I said it, but I didn't mean it. It was just, I don't know, a stupid thing I said without thinking. I do that sometimes, say things I don't mean." "We all do," he said quietly. "The difference is usually we say them to people who can't leave, people who are stuck with us. But sometimes we forget that nobody's really stuck. Everyone's got a breaking point." I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered what his story was, how he'd ended up here, whether he'd had someone once who'd said something careless and destroyed everything. "I'm sorry he dragged you into this," I said. He waved a hand dismissively. "Made my night more interesting, at least. Don't get a lot of free entertainment out here." My phone buzzed. The Uber was 3 minutes away. I hauled myself up off the ground, brushed off my dress as best I could, and tried to compose myself into something resembling a functional human being. "Good luck," the homeless man said as I started walking toward the street to wait for my ride. "Hope you two work it out." "Thanks," I said, though I had no idea if we would. No idea if there was even anything left to work out. The Uber pulled up, a beat-up Honda Civic with a driver who took one look at my tear-stained face and wisely decided not to make conversation. I climbed in the back, gave him my address, and spent the entire 20-minute drive staring out the window, watching the city blur past, trying to process what had just happened. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus's face, that cold, blank expression, the way he'd looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was nothing. And the worst part? The absolute worst part? I deserved it, not the public humiliation, not the viral videos, not the abandonment, but the anger, the hurt, the feeling of betrayal. Yeah, I deserved all of that, because he was right. I had been making those jokes for years. I had been comparing him to other men. I had been careless with his feelings, thoughtless with my words. I'd justified it to myself by saying they were just jokes, just observations, just preferences. But the truth was, I'd been slowly chipping away at his self-esteem, his confidence, his sense of being enough. And tonight, he'd decided he'd had enough. I chased after him, my heels catching on the uneven pavement, nearly tripping. "Marcus, stop, don't do this." He got in the car, started the engine. I grabbed the door handle, but he'd already locked it. "Marcus!" He looked at me through the window, his face completely blank, and said, "I hope he's tall enough for you. Have fun." And then he drove off. He actually drove off. I stood there in the parking lot, my heart pounding, my mind spinning, watching his taillights disappear down the street. The homeless man walked over, still holding my purse, and said, "You all right, miss?" I snatched it from him, checked to make sure everything was still inside, and then just stood there, shaking. People were still watching, still recording, still laughing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to rewind time and take back everything I'd said. But I couldn't. So I called an Uber, waited 20 agonizing minutes in that horrible parking lot, and finally got home hours later, mascara smudged, heels in my hand, feeling like the world's biggest fool. By the time I got home, I'd already seen the videos. Someone had posted them on TikTok with the caption, "Girl gets traded for a taller guy, instantly regrets it." It had hundreds of thousands of views, thousands of comments, people calling me every name in the book, saying I deserved it, saying Marcus was a king. I reported the videos, but they just kept getting reposted. My face was everywhere. And Marcus, he wasn't home. I walked through the house calling his name, but it was silent. His side of the closet was empty. His toothbrush was gone. His shoes, his jackets, everything. On the kitchen counter next to my wedding ring, which he'd clearly taken off and left behind, was a note. It said, "You joked about trading me, so I made it real." I stared at that note for a long time. It's been a few weeks now since that night. The videos have mostly died down, though they still pop up every now and then. People still recognize me sometimes, and I get the occasional nasty comment when I'm out in public. Marcus and I haven't spoken. He blocked my number, my social media, everything. I tried reaching out through mutual friends, but they all said he doesn't want to hear from me. I've been staying with my mom, sleeping in my childhood bedroom, trying to figure out what to do next. And honestly, I still don't think I was completely in the wrong. Yes, I said something hurtful. Yes, I should have been more aware of his feelings. But does that justify what he did? Does that justify the public humiliation, the abandonment, the total destruction of our relationship? I don't think so. I think he could have handled it differently. I think he could have talked to me, told me how he felt, given me a chance to apologize and change. But he didn't. He chose revenge instead. And now we're both paying the price. Here's the part I hate admitting, even to myself. I do miss him. I miss the way he'd make me coffee in the morning, exactly how I like it. I miss the way he'd laugh at my dumb jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. I miss the way he'd pull me close at night, his arm wrapped around my waist, making me feel safe. I miss the life we had before I ruined it. Because that's what I did, right? I ruined it. Even if I don't want to admit it, even if I try to rationalize it and justify it and blame him for overreacting, deep down, I know the truth. I hurt him. Over and over again. With little comments, little jabs, little jokes that I thought were harmless but weren't. And eventually, he'd had enough. I just wish he'd told me before it was too late. But even knowing all that, even understanding that I played a part in this disaster, I still can't shake the feeling that what he did was worse. Because here's the thing, words can hurt, yes. But actions destroy. I said some things I shouldn't have said, but he orchestrated an entire plan to humiliate me. He made a calculated decision to hurt me in the worst way possible. That's not just reactive. That's not just standing up for himself. That's vindictive. And maybe I'm biased. Maybe I'm still trying to protect myself from the full weight of my own guilt. But I really do believe that his response was disproportionate. I didn't deserve to be left in that parking lot. I didn't deserve to be turned into a viral meme. I didn't deserve to lose my husband over a joke. Even if it was a bad joke. Even if I should have known better. I still didn't deserve that. So here I am, weeks later, still trying to make sense of it all. Still trying to figure out if I'm the villain or the victim or somewhere in between. And you know what? I still don't have an answer. All I know is this: I made a joke. He made it real. And now we're both living with the consequences. I'm living with the shame, the videos, the judgment, the loneliness. He's living with— I don't know what he's living with. Maybe relief, maybe regret, maybe nothing at all. But here's what I do know, what I'm absolutely certain of. I didn't deserve what he did to me. And if anyone thinks I did, if anyone thinks that one thoughtless comment justifies public humiliation and the end of a marriage, then maybe they're just as cruel as he was. Or maybe I'm still too blind to see the truth. Maybe I'll never see it. Maybe that's the real tragedy here. Not that my marriage ended, but that I still can't fully understand why. All I know is that I said I'd trade him for someone taller, and he made me stand in a parking lot next to a homeless man and told me to go ahead. And neither of us will ever be the same.